that's very important to keep in mind when you're writing your resume is that companies are using AI on their end to screen your resume to see if you're a good fit for the job. So when you're writing your resume, you have to keep that in mind in order to get past that screening process, in order to really optimize your chances of getting that position. So how do we do that? How do we get around that system? So first of all, what is the ATS? So the ATS is what's called the Applicant Tracking System. So this is a program that's used by companies to screen your resume to see if you're a good fit. So you need to make sure that your resume is ATS friendly in order to make sure that you are getting through this first filtering process. These systems are going to be scanning your resumes for keywords and the information that's crucial to making a job match. So again, a well-formatted resume is crucial to making sure that you get through this first part of the screening process. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that our resumes are in a position to be able to really be optimized for that system? Okay, so first of all, we need to make sure that we use a simple standard format. So your layout should be clear. You're going to avoid using any sort of complex layouts or tables or graphics that might confuse the ATS. It may keep the ATS from being able to read what is in that table. And along those same lines, you're going to make sure that you have just a single column of information there. You're not going to have like sort of multiple columns because sometimes the ATS isn't going to be able to read which column is going to be pertinent. Also make sure that you use standard fonts, because sometimes if you're using a font that's not standard or too fancy or too sort of strange, the ATS isn't going to be able to read it. So it's not going to be able to even find these keywords that it needs, and it's not going to make it through that screening process. And lastly, you're going to want to make sure that you avoid using headers and footers, because first of all, again, those headers and footers can confuse the ATS. Secondly, you don't want to have any information in those headers and footers that's important, because ATS might not be able to read it. So again, we're going to keep everything nicely formatted, clearly formatted in a standard font. Okay. This is another really important one. We want to make sure that we optimize those keywords. The ATS is going to be screening for keywords. How do we find those keywords? We're going to look for that in the job description. You're going to really analyze that job description. If you are unsure, you can always put that job description into an AI like ChatGPT or Google Gemini and ask it to pull out those keywords for you so you can make sure those are in your resume. Also, you're going to make sure to use action verbs. You want to make sure to highlight to those to your employer and really to ATS what specific skills you have in the form of action verbs. So, you know, I helped organize, or I utilized this product, or I designed this. So again, those strong action verbs to describe your experience. And secondly, be sure to include all the relevant skills you have. So to be able to highlight your skills and experience, even sometimes in a dedicated section. So again, what skills do you have that are going to be relevant to this job? Okay. Also, make sure that you use standard section headings. So again, you'll hear me say this a lot in this presentation, that again, you want to keep things standard. You don't want to confuse ATS, because again, these are not real people that are going to be reading it at this first stage. So keep everything nice and clearly formatted and clearly labeled so that ATS can be able to read it and gather that information. So again, work experience, skills, education, certifications, right? So that's going to be something that ATS can clearly recognize to be able to gather that data. Also, make sure that you keep your formatting consistent within your sections. Again, so you don't confuse ATS, so that they can say, yes, this is, this makes sense to me, and this is very clear for that software. Okay. Lastly, you're going to want to make sure you save your resume properly. You're going to put it in some sort of standardized format, either in a docx or PDF. And also, really important, follow the instructions in the job description. You would be surprised at how many candidates end up, getting their whole application just immediately thrown out because they didn't follow the directions. If it says, submit a PDF, submit a PDF. If it says, submit your PDF, as a separate whatever in a separate place, make sure you do that. Read those directions, because if you don't read the directions and follow them, a human's never going to see your job application. So all this work that you put into it, and they're never going to see it because, again, you missed a very crucial step. Okay. So next question, should I use AI to help me write my resume? So again, there are a lot of different programs out there, a lot of different AI programs out there that can be used to write your resume. So again, should we use those? And I would say, yes, absolutely, you should use those, but with that caveat. So first of all, you want to make sure that you're aware of the cost of the program you're using. Some of these programs out there will say, oh yeah, we're free to use. And then you build out your whole resume and it says, great, now you have to pay to download your resume. And you're like, well, okay. And maybe that's good. Maybe it's worth it to you, but just be aware of the cost of that program before you put in the time to start using it. Second of all, make sure that whatever program you're using optimizes for ATS. So it'll say on there if it does. And most of the resume programs you find out there will. But again, you just want to make sure that that specifically optimizes for ATS. And lastly, always make sure that once it is finished, it is personalized to you. Because even if it's tailored to the job, you still want to make sure that authentic you is coming through in that resume. So again, look it over, make sure that it's in your voice, that you can really see yourself in that resume. Because again, you want to make sure that, your resume is not only tailored to that job, but it's also personalized to you. And with that in mind, good luck and happy job hunting.